Welcome to Real Foot Forward, a West Tennessee podcast from Discovery Park of America in Union City, Tennessee. Today's episode is brought to you by Final Flight Outfitters.
Thank you, Zach, and welcome everybody to Real Foot Forward, a West Tennessee podcast where we explore the history, the people, and the culture of our home here in West Tennessee. I'm your host, Scott Williams. Okay, Zach, as usual, before I introduce today's very special guest, what is something you discovered this week at Discovery Park of America?
Well, Scott, it just so happened that the week after our last recording, when I discovered the 2024 Spring Winners in the Northwest Tennessee Photography Club, it was replaced with the Winter Winners. So this week I discovered those photos that you can see in Art Hall. The themes for the winter were wildlife, churches, and country roads. The shots of the churches are beautiful. So next time you're at Discovery Park in Art Hall, check them out.
I have not been, I don't think I've been down there to see them since the new ones went up, but I do see all of the fancy paintings that are up there of former board members and current board members. And speaking of board members, our guest today is Betty Ann Tanner, a former board member of Discovery Park of America. It's hard to come up with just a really short description of Betty Ann Tanner, but what I came up with was she has spent years at the intersection of Tennessee tradition and national politics. And now she's a 2025 Discovery Award honoree. Welcome, Betty Ann.
Thank you so much, Scott. I'm really honored to be on the podcast today, and I appreciate this extra opportunity that Discovery Park offers to those who perhaps can't come and visit to be able to watch one of their podcasts. So thank you very much for having me. I'm honored.
You bet. So back us all the way up for people who don't know you like we do. Where were you born? Where did you grow up? Let's start from the very beginning.
Okay. Well, I was born in actually at the hospital in Jackson, Tennessee, but I was raised in Huntingdon, Tennessee, in Carroll County. We had lived there since my parents moved there. After their marriage, around the middle 1940s, they moved there. And Daddy started an international harvester farm equipment business. And Mother taught school, so that's where we were raised. I was raised not on a farm that raised crops, but we did have cows. And so I was out in the country until about the ninth grade when we decided to move to town. And so that was great for me because I could ride my bicycle around the blocks there with friends. And I also enjoyed cheerleading. I was a basketball player, and then I went on from there to the University of Tennessee at Knoxville, where I later met John. And after his senior year of law school and my senior year of undergraduate, we moved to Charleston, where he was enlisted in the Navy. He was with the Judge Advocate General Corps, and we were in Charleston about 3.5 years before moving back to Union City, where he practiced law and later ran for state representative. And then 12 years after that, he decided he'd like to try Congress, and he ran for Congress and was elected. And about 5 years after he was elected, I sort of moved up there. We never sold our house. We always kept our home right here in Union City. But we lived part-time in Washington and part-time in Union City. And then he retired in 2011. And we sort of split our time between Washington and Union City because of our involvement there that continues today. And so that sort of brings us up to right now, to 2025.
So I'm curious, a lot of people listening might be young people who are trying to figure out what they want to do with their life. You obviously didn't have what unrolled before you in mind as you were starting out in elementary school and high school. What did you think you wanted to do when you went to college?
Well, at first I thought I wanted to be an accountant. I loved numbers and I loved math, but some of those accounting courses and statistics courses sort of tripped me up. So I decided to go with my other passion, which was interior design. I've always loved taking little shoe boxes as a little girl and painting them and taking my doll furniture and rearranging the rooms. So I thought, well, that will be something that will be really interesting and something I can do, in my own home or for friends or family, or even start a business, which I did in Washington when we moved up there. So that's what occupied my time and my thought processes.
So when you were trying to decide where to go to college, was UT your first choice, or did you have other potential colleges you thought about, or it was a no question?
Well, really and truly, it was no question. But one day I can remember saying to my daddy, Daddy, what do you think about Memphis State, which is what it was called then? He said, well, that's a great school, but I'll pay for the University of Tennessee at Knoxville for you. So that was sort of a no-brainer. My brother was there. He was 5 years older than me. He was already there. He played football there. So I thought it'd be great. And I found a young lady from Greenfield, Tennessee, and Patty Harris. And we'd been friends growing up because my grandparents lived in Greenfield. And we became roommates and friends, pledged the same sorority, and started dating ATOs. And the rest is history.
And then how did you meet Congressman Tanner?
Well, my brother, again, that was 5 years older, was a member of ATO fraternity. And we became friends with several of his friends. And our sorority, the AD and the ATOs, just seemed to get along quite well. And we all double dated and dated each other and visited each other at their different homes from time to time through the years. So that's how I met John.
So had you when you started dating and when he brought you home to Union City, had you already been here to Union City before, or was that your first visit?
No, because Union City was 50 miles from Huntington, Tennessee. It was that no man's land. I had never been to Union City before. It was not even one of the towns that our football teams or basketball teams even played in sports. So I'd heard of it, of course, but I'd never really been here.
Now, what did his family do?
His father, Buzz Tanner, had an insurance business and a savings and loan business. I believe the insurance business now is our son Portis is running that business now, which is about 5 generations old here for Union City, Tennessee. And his mother.
Full disclosure, he is Discovery Park's insurance agent. So
exactly, I did know that too, and thank you so much. Yes.
And so what did Congressman Tanner's mother do?
His mother was a chemistry major and had a degree, but she was a homemaker.
So what did you think when you showed up to Union City?
Well, it was not a bad town. It was a little different from Huntington. It was twice as big, for one thing. It had more shopping and more places to go for dinner. But I enjoyed getting to know John's circle of friends. Some of them I'd already known at UT Knoxville anyway. And I thought it was just a great place to live. I really think it's one of the best. The small towns in rural West Tennessee are notoriously wonderful for raising families. The churches are all wonderful. You can have many choices there. And the friendship circles are strong. I remember originally we were, the first organization I guess I joined was the J-Sets. John was a JC and I was a J-Sets. We always did the chimes for charity. And later on, I joined one of the review clubs, which was a great way to make friends as well. And shortly thereafter, there was a tennis circle of a group of ladies who started playing tennis. And that was just a lot of fun. We got to meet different people from the county and had leagues. And sometimes we'd travel to Murray, Kentucky, and even play indoors sometimes. And I also was asked to be on the board of the American Cancer Society, which I did. My mother had done that in Huntington, that and the Red Cross mobile. And so I started even back as a child noticing a lack of service and volunteerism. So those were the things that occupied us. And, I was a room mother for the children, for Elizabeth and Portis, and things of that nature. And we would have birthday parties and couples club. There was a couples bridge club that was a lot of fun too.
And I know you hung out with Robert and Jenny Kirkland, so we're going to talk about them in a little bit after the break. But before we get to that, what was the scenario around which John came to you and said, "Here's what I'm thinking about doing," or did you already know from the very beginning that he sort of had a political bent?
Well, that's a really interesting question because when we were dating and getting fairly serious about thinking about marriage, he said to me one day, "Now, if we do get married, I just want to let you know that I'm really interested in politics and I may be gone a lot." And I'm thinking, okay, well, what does that mean? Maybe a meeting, a couple of nights a week or something like that. But little did I know then that meant January through April, he would be gone Tuesday through Thursday at the state legislature, and sometimes it would even go into the Fridays as well. And I don't know, there just seemed to be more meetings than I had anticipated. But the campaigns were a lot of fun. I loved people, and I loved getting around to the different counties and meeting people from all the community service groups that we would go to ask for votes. So it was a lot of fun. I grew up really in a political family because my daddy had been the political campaign chairman for Governor Frank Clement when he ran for governor. So I was exposed to it at a young age.
Now, I guess I should know this, but I don't know if he won right away the first campaigns, or did you have to go through some campaigns that he didn't win, or did he just win every time?
We were very fortunate. John never lost an election, and he won every time. The first, the state representative, I believe there were two or three people in the Democratic field, and then we won the Democratic nomination easily, and then he won also the general election. In the congressional campaign, though, there were 5 candidates, and that was a little bit tougher. But he won on a very hot August night. I remember being downtown at in one of the department store buildings. That's where we had the victory party, and I believe it was 110 degrees in that building, Scott. But it was a grand and very glorious night. And then he went on to win the general election, of course, in November as well, and continued for 11 other terms. I'm sorry.
Yeah, that he was in for quite a while. Now, most of us listening will never be either a congressperson nor the spouse of one. What is it like when you've won and all of a sudden you're in DC trying to figure out how to balance, what your duties are there with what your duties are back home?
Well, I'll tell you, our transition from Union City to Washington could not have been any easier. And that's because our predecessor, Ed Jones, had an apartment in the very old Methodist building. It's still there. It's right beside the Supreme Court. He and Miss Lou had that apartment their entire time. It was furnished and even had a can of soup in the pantry. And they offered to let us sublet that from them. And we did that for the first 5 years. So that was easy. I could keep our home here in Union City and just transition to that environment. But I didn't really move for the first 5 years. My mother was ill, and I needed to stay here in West Tennessee and take care of her. And then Elizabeth became engaged to Kyle Atkins, our son-in-law. And so we had a wedding to plan. And I can just remember that September of 1993, when we'd gotten all the wedding gifts packed up and put the wedding gown in storage, that I thought, well, perhaps now I can do something. Our son Portis had gone to Australia to work for Federal Express. So he was not here, and Kyle and Elizabeth were off in Birmingham at Samford Law School. So I thought, well, now it's time. Maybe I can go and do something with John in Washington. So it took about 5 years to transition from 89 to 93.
I guess I could be wrong, but I guess you have never asked AI to write about yourself. So before we got on here, I just wanted to make sure I
Oh,
covered everything. So I asked AI, to give me a paragraph about Betty Ann Tanner. And here's what it said. It's very complimentary, by the way. It said, with an
oh,
innate ability to connect with people from all walks of life, Betty Ann Tanner became more than just a political spouse. She was a key force behind the scenes, balancing life in the nation's capital while staying deeply engaged in her West Tennessee community. Whether hosting dignitaries, championing local causes, or offering candid insights into the ever changing political landscape, she's done it all with humor, warmth, and an unmistakable Southern grace. That was very
Wow.
nice of
wow,
Mr. or Mrs.
wow.
AI, wasn't it?
That is very gracious. My goodness, yes.
So
I feel
tell us
very
tell
honored.
us about your both your interior decorating career that you developed in DC, but
Mhm.
then also all the nonprofit work that you've done. There's a few that I'm particularly interested in, but they're all interesting. So tell us a little about that.
Well, because my degree was in interior design, I did a few things in Union City. I can remember helping Mr. Tanner with the insurance offices and updating those. And then he also owned the Capitol Theater. And I can remember putting the fern wallpaper on the walls and that. And it lasted for several years. I think it was just removed a few years ago.
Wow.
Um, and that was a lot of fun. But then when I got to Washington, of course, because it's such a large area, I can remember after we at 5 years after John and I moved to Washington, we bought a condo right on East Capitol Street. It's 2 blocks behind the Supreme Court. Incredible location. It had to be close enough for John to be able to walk to work because we didn't have a car. And so I knew that I wanted plantation shutters on my windows in that little condo. So when I bought the shutters, I asked the gentleman, the salesman, did he know of anyone who might need a sales rep for plantation shutters? He says, well, I don't, but I have a friend in Richmond who does. So I began becoming the sales rep of Shenandoah Shutters for the Northern Virginia, Washington, and part of Maryland area. And as I would go into people's homes, they would ask me different questions about other areas of their house, just not just the windows. So we started talking about colors for the walls or furniture that would be applicable. And so I started a business called Betty Ann Tanner Accessories. I wanted it to be Tanner Interiors, but that name was already taken. So I started Betty Ann Tanner Accessories and started the interior design side of my business.
And so that obviously led to a lot of contacts. When you're in DC, it's all about, who you know. So you
Right.
obviously made a lot of connections with folks because your list of nonprofits that you work with
Mm.
is extensive. What are some of your favorites that you connected with in DC?
Well, let me back up just a minute to 1989 when John was elected and the Bush administration. George H.W. Bush was the president then. And when we went to orientation right after John was elected, it was a great week of orientation that really helps the not only the member become familiar with what their job is, but also the spouses and how they should fit in. The first thing I did was go to orientation at the Congressional Club, which is an umbrella organization for all the spouses of members of Congress on the House side and the Senate side, and also the administrative spouses can join as well, and the Supreme Court spouses.
Hmm.
So it was a great cross section of people in Washington to get to know and become familiar with. They taught us, where the best places to live are, where you should shop if you had children, where they should go to school. And one of the first things I remember Barbara Bush coming and speaking to us and saying, join everything you can and then pick and choose what you really love. And you can sort of fade away from some of them because there's no way to have enough time to honor everything you've joined. So I really concentrated on the International Club, which is another umbrella organization for diplomatic spouses, as well as spouses from the administration, the government, the Supreme Court, and other people in Washington who have started different organizations. And so you get to know those people and you make connections. And one of my strongest connections was with the Prevent Cancer Society. And I really enjoyed that. I knew my daddy had colon cancer, so I knew how important that was to help raise money and find new ways of prevention and cures for cancer. I was asked to chair the March of Dimes Gala, which as a child, I can remember, the little cards that we brought home that we were supposed to fill with dimes. So I got involved with that, helped them with their gala. And then I was also asked to be a trustee on Meridian International Center's board. That's an organization that I guess they reach out to people. They do a lot of art exchanges from country to country. It's just a way to bring people together that's not so divisive. Art is a universal language. And we even had an art exchange down at the West Tennessee Art Museum. We brought in some Cuban art, and I also helped bring an art exhibition to the Nashville Public Library. So I was always looking for ways to make people feel more comfortable and to educate them about people really from all over the world and what their ideas and thoughts might be, because we can always share and always learn from those experiences.
Well, and then I remember when I first came here to explore, my wife and I came here just to explore whether or not we would want to get involved and how we could help. And, of course, I had a job in Washington, D.C. that I loved. And I thought, well, there won't be anybody at this little meet and greet, that has connections in DC. Of course, you were one of the very first people that I met, and you told me you were on the board of Ford's Theater, which, of course, a lot of people, so I had to say, hey, I'm here secretly. So,
Oh, right. Yes. Oh, my goodness. I loved my 23 years on the board at Ford's Theater. I just love the concept that Abraham Lincoln always brought to try to bring people together and to celebrate their likenesses and try to diminish their differences. He was one of, our greatest presidents, if not the greatest president. So I was really honored to serve on that committee and helped with all of their galas as well. Raising money for, as you know, for nonprofits is always tricky. And so that's one thing that we help do. John and I always enjoyed going to the gala, which always started with a reception at the White House. So that was a tremendous amount of fun.
Well, and I know that Robert Kirkland leaned on you a little bit when he was thinking of Discovery Park, because obviously we're a museum and there's a lot of connections there between the two. When we get back, we're going to talk a little bit about that, but we're going to take a real quick break.
With Final Flight Outfitters, you don't have to hunt for the world's best gear. The best of the best, selected by some of the world's best hunters, can be found in their Union City store, in their catalog, and online at finalflight.net.
I hope you're enjoying the Real Foot Forward podcast from Discovery Park of America. If you are, please be sure to subscribe, rate, and leave a positive review on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. Our guest today is Betty Ann Tanner.
Betty Ann, of course, we have the exhibit here that features the work for you and former Congressman Tanner here at Discovery Park. What are your memories of Robert and Jenny Kirkland?
Oh, my goodness. John actually was one of Robert's friends, and also his younger brother, Ronnie Kirkland, and John graduated from high school together. They went to UT together. They were roommates together. And Ron Kirkland was actually in our wedding. So that's how John got to know Robert. because he was the older brother of one of his best friends. And then, of course, Jenny, as she was known then, Jenna Lee, they were friends in high school as well. And I can remember Jenny was in our tennis league, so we would occasionally play tennis together and got to know them socially too through Martha and Jim Rippey, who were very dear friends of ours. Of course, Jim went on to work for Robert at Discovery Park. Robert was always a visionary, though. He was a brilliant man. All of the Kirkland family are smart men they were then, but of course there have been some women born into the family finally who are great people as well. And I think Robert's vision for wanting to bring an educational facility to rural West Tennessee to serve all of, not just West Tennessee, but all the surrounding states as well, was just incredibly generous. And of course, Jenny was always there at his side. They were always collecting and always thinking ahead to what things could be the most important things that could really transform this little area into a real educational facility of discovery for our area.
What did John think when I'm assuming Robert Kirkland said, "Hey, I'd like to put an exhibit of you in this museum"? Was he thinking about Abraham Lincoln and you at Ford's Theater? Was he thinking, "Hey, I'm still around. We don't need an exhibit yet"?
Right. Exactly. Well, actually, as it turned out, when you are a member of Congress for 22 years, you amass an incredible collection of items. And John actually bought his desk. You had the option of buying your congressional desk. So after a while, John realized, my goodness, I've got a lot of stuff. What in the world can we do with this? So what happened was, when he retired, the University of Tennessee at Martin's library took the two-dimensional things, the papers and things of that nature that they could put on microfilm. And then Robert said, well, we can take the three-dimensional things out here. So we were actually thrilled to have a place to put this big old 8-foot congressional desk and the rocking chair that John sat in very often in his office. John loves to rock. So we had the rocking chair that was, by the way, built at one of the prisons in Tennessee. And so that's there, along with the bottle that I actually christened the USS Whirlwind. That was the USS Whirlwind is a patrol craft. It's 12 boats in that fleet, but it's a highly maneuverable boat or ship, I should say. And I was honored to christen that ship back in the mid 1990s. That bottle is there, along with, I know you've got some items from our congressional campaign also. And as you walk in, there's the screen there that you can touch, and you can hear our daughter Elizabeth singing the song Tanner for Tennessee. That was written by Joe Haynes, who actually lived here in Union City as well. And then on the walls there, Scott, there are also that wonderful historic collection for me. All the pictures from the White House Christmas parties. Every year, the president would host the congressional delegation, and we would always go. Sometimes John and I went together. Sometimes he would take Elizabeth and our granddaughter, Abby. Sometimes I would take my brother, Scotty, or my nephew. So we gave other people in our family an opportunity to attend that party. And there's all kinds of photographs there on the walls going through all those administrations of those.
Yeah, I was wondering, that's one of my favorite things when I'm over there showing people around. I always point out all those really interesting photographs of presidents that are there on the wall with you guys. Are there any moments from that sticks out that are shareable on a podcast?
Oh, well, I can remember. I can remember going through, and my goodness, for the first time meeting President Bush, the first President Bush. And I had on a pretty fancy outfit. I guess being from rural West Tennessee, we really wanted to dress up and impress our president. So I can remember him saying, "Oh my goodness." He looked at Barbara and he says, "Barbara, I think we might be underdressed." So
That's awesome.
that was my first introduction to George H.W. Bush, he was just a very gracious and wonderful man, we thought.
Well, how many of the presidents have you met?
Well, starting with, now you're going to test really put me to the test here. Of course, starting with H.W. Bush. And then, okay, then after that, I believe, was that not coming next? Was that not Bill Clinton?
Yeah, I tell you
Um,
what, I'm gonna look it up so I can go through
Good.
with you
Oh,
because that's hard to I think there's a song um if you go all the way back. Yeah, you're right. So it was George H.W., which you met. Bill Clinton,
uh-huh. For
did you
two
meet him?
administrations, right? Yeah. Oh, yes. Many times. He and John played golf together.
Oh, and y'all
Yes.
were y'all were all Southerners, so you had to stick together.
So that sort of worked, right? Mm-hmm.
George W. Bush.
George W. Bush, yes, he was great, and I met him, and of course his wife Laura also, yes, for two
And then
terms, right?
Obama.
Obama, yes, and it was Michelle Obama that I actually was chairman of the First Ladies Luncheon in 2010 that honored her, so two terms there. Mm-hmm.
And Trump and Biden.
And Trump, of course, and yes, and we've met President Trump, and of course, and then the Bidens we knew from the previous administration. Yes, and Trump was the president when we went to the White House after before one of the Ford Theater galas, and they were very gracious to host the Ford's Theater folks that were coming there before we went on to the performance at Ford's Theater.
So not many people. Let's see. That's one, two, three, four, five, six presidents that
Mm-hmm.
you've met. Not many folks can say that.
I guess not, and have photographs with all of them as well. That's right.
Now, what is the First Ladies Luncheon? I know you've been very active in that. I'd love to hear a little bit about that.
Well, the Congressional Club actually started in 1908. And in 1912, they decided it would be a good idea to have a fundraiser because they wanted to build their own building. Previously, they had just rented a townhouse down on New York Avenue, but they decided we need our own structure. So in 1912, they decided we're going to have well, they didn't have a luncheon, it was breakfast. And the reason they had the breakfast instead of a luncheon is because a breakfast was only two courses. And so that would be cheaper to have and to put on. So they had a breakfast at the Willard, which is the grandest, oldest hotel in Washington, just grand, as you know, Scott.
Hmm.
So they had the breakfast, and from there on, it did evolve into a luncheon. I can remember being at the Omni Showroom for my uh, first ladies luncheon, where I took my mother and John's mother. It was a lot of fun and uh, just an incredible opportunity for us to go and be able to be with that large group of ladies. So, and then from there, we moved to the Washington Hilton, which seats about 1,800 people. And that's actually the location where I hosted the luncheon for um, Michelle Obama. But I've worked on the luncheon every year since I became a congressional spouse. This year, again, I'll be working on the decorations for that. It's April 2nd this year. And we have family and friends from all over the country come in. And like I said, about 1,800 people, and including at the head table, there'll be the Supreme Court spouses and administrative spouses. So I'll get to see Melania Trump and other people in the administration.
Yeah, that's
And
amazing. Well,
it's
it's
a
it's
lot of work,
it's
but it's
amazing. I
fun.
was going to say it's amazing how much you do. I know what goes into just a small gala that we have
Mm-hmm.
coming up that you are one of the honorees. So congratulations and
Thank
thank
you.
you.
Thank you for
But
that.
it's nothing compared to trying to do it for thousands of people. That's it's a whole different ball game. But we are going to have just as much fun at the Discovery Awards as you have there at the First Ladies Luncheon, I bet.
I know we will. I've been before and I've always enjoyed it. It's a lot of fun to see that many people in the space and to get to not only see your friends and family, but then to meet other people, the other friends and family of the other honorees as well.
Yeah, it's going to be a whole lot of fun. Thank you for spending some time with us. I know you're busy, and we're really grateful that you took a minute to chat with us.
Thank you so much, Scott, for having me. And I look forward to seeing you all on March the 8th, if not before. Thank you so much for hosting me today.
Absolutely. And thanks to all you listeners who've joined us today at Discovery Park of America. Shout out to our friends over at Final Flight Outfitters for sponsoring today's episode. Our mission here is to inspire children and adults to see beyond. To plan an experience here for you and your family, visit discoveryparkofamerica.com.